All right, well, g'day. It's a little bit exciting to be here, Anna. The Red Zone, the podcast, the first one.
Excited.
Look, I'm particularly excited because we're telling stories, and that's been such a theme through 2020. And today we're going to hear some amazing stories from four of PBC's absolute finest, some of them leaving the building. Insert tears here. But Anna, welcome. How excited are you?
I'm so pumped, Bully. It's something we've been really passionate about, and to see it realised at the end of a really tough year as well with COVID. And 2020 has been a really great year for us as well. I know people say it's challenging, but what it started for us is what we've kind of coined, what the students have coined, is the Tommy effect, isn't it?
Probably need to mention the great man. So
Definitely.
Tommy Herschel, he better listen to this. So Tommy, if you're listening to this, really we've come full circle from so much of what Tommy's brought to the school with his workshops, challenge the title of man, growing good men, growing good women, and ultimately hopefully talking about growing some good humans. And we certainly have four great humans with us today.
Phenomenal ones.
And I guess before we start introducing our first beautiful young bloke that we're going to chat to, is acknowledging the power of storytelling and the catharsis and all the wonderful things that we've seen occur this year based on kids just getting up and telling their stories. And we had a great little chat in the car on the way up here about how we're going to do this. So probably without further ado, Anna, we need to introduce the great man himself, Remy.
Thank you.
Welcome, Rem.
Thank you, miss. Thank you, sir.
Because logically, Rem, we thought we'd start with the shyest person just to ease things in.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's me.
So, mate, we were talking in the car on the way here, and I know we've had an amazing opportunity to share four stories, one of yours, obviously, with the staff, and that was a really powerful experience, and I guess it was the impetus for us to go, we need to record this. And I remember sitting in the library with you four guys chatting beforehand, and I said to all of you, I wish I'd just recorded that. So, just even looking back at the opportunity that you had, how do you feel about sitting in front of about 150 staff telling bare bones and all your story about some of the stuff that was really pretty prickly and tough for you?
I really liked it. I think it was a pretty beneficial thing to do. And like seeing the way that even teachers reacted to hearing like students' stories is like stuff you wouldn't usually get to see. Like usually it's like teachers are teaching you stuff in class and you're writing it down, but having to being able to actually talk to them about your life and seeing their reaction is pretty interesting.
There wasn't a dry eye in that theatre.
Yeah,
everyone was really emotional, and I think it was also bringing that connection of a lot of the teachers. I know for Bully and I, we are more just about well-being, and not that academic focus of it all the time, but for some of the other teachers it gave them that realisation that you are humans who have an amazing backstory before you walk through those gates at the front. And I feel like that was the most powerful thing. But I loved seeing you and the rest of your crew at the end and talking about it. It was just such a buzz, Bully, wasn't it?
It's very easy for me to sit back and put myself in that spot where you guys told that story. It's one of the most powerful opportunities, and I feel very privileged to be involved in that. So I guess, Remy, we talked about in the car here how telling your story makes you feel. Like we talked about for you, what is it like when you tell your story, and you've done it a few times now, what does that do for you, and what do you think the benefits are?
So I've always kind of had the perspective that like when you go through stuff in life, there's certain like lessons that you can take away from what you go through. And I think if you go through things in life but you never talk about it, I think you just rob those experiences to actually have a positive impact. And so like a lot of the stuff that I've gone through, I can look at it being like, man, that's terrible, and that's just caused sadness and all this bad stuff. Or I can turn around and look at it and go, hey, like it has actually had some positive impacts, and if I can share those with people, it might have a positive impact on them as well. And so then you're taking something that was bad and you're making it good in some way. So
and it highlights your strengths as well, Remy.
Yeah.
The fact that you dealt with such adversity and so many difficult challenges, and you took it in your stride.
And I guess without further ado, I feel like it's a good point. So, we talked about this when we actually gave the staff a bit of an insight. So I distinctly remember that period of time sitting in the room chatting to you and your mum many times over.
Yep.
So take us back, mate, because it was a pretty crappy time of life for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, where to even begin? Like, you've been through pretty much most of it with me.
Yep.
Because it was all at middle school. And I guess it started like from the beginning, even just coming to high school. Like I had really bad bullying go on from the beginning, and so as soon as I came into high school, it was like a terrible start, and I hated it from day one. and then stuff just kind of kept happening, kept steamrolling, and yeah.
So, like, if let's pick a couple of those monumental life events. So, probably for you, you were sitting in a situation that was beyond your control. And again, this has been a bit of a constant theme with you guys. Like, as a young person, you had no control over a lot of the situations that you faced. Yeah. And we talk about people's ability to be resilient, but it's a skill ultimately that you need to be taught. But for you, there were a lot of people in your corner, but ultimately you had to manage that situation to get to the point where you're at. So, like, what were some of the biggest challenges for you? We talked about stuff at school, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes with mum and dad, wasn't there?
Yeah. So, to go like really into it, that's how my grade 7 started, and then towards like grade 8. So to take it back. So I'm from New Zealand, if you can't tell. And,
kia ora.
Kia ora. And so when we moved to Australia, we were kind of always on the back foot. We were always struggling financially, which is something a lot of people wouldn't have really even noticed. There were times when like we'd have to get like food boxes from like the church and stuff just to eat.
Yeah, wow.
Mum was working like late nights and doing overtime cleaning. So it was always a bit rough. And I found out in grade 8 that the reason because of that was my dad was a compulsive gambler. And so that was like a massive hit to me because it's like, I think every young guy's dad is always kind of their hero.
Yeah.
And like growing up, like my dad, I loved him. Like we used to have a butcher shop. And so I'd always go to the butcher shop when I was a kid and I'd be like making sausages with dad and stuff. So yeah, like my dad was like my idol, and then all of a sudden, that just gets destroyed. And so that was in grade 8, and I remember there was one time in grade 8 when I was in class, and it was a math class, and I hate math as well. And I was sitting outside, so I was sitting by the window in class, and I was just looking out the window, and I can just remember like trying my absolute hardest not to start crying.
Yeah.
And I just started crying, like breaking down the middle of the class, and I was like, geez, so... That was one of the big things that happened. And then,
No, I was just going to say, like, obviously for all of us, our parents, we expect that they're there to be our absolute support and our rocks. And pretty much what we're going to hear today is the same thing that, for a lot of you guys, your parents' situations that were outside your control, they put you in a place like you just described where you're literally in a classroom trying to hold back tears for no other reason than that just happened to me. Yeah. It's not my fault. What do I do and how do I bounce back? So I guess for me, when I hear that, we've got the school as a context. What sort of stuff went on for you at school? Like, how was school given what you've just gone through? And try not to swear, Rem.
Terrible.
Yeah.
It was, to be like frank, like super hard.
Yeah.
And like I said, I already kind of didn't like school because of what happened in grade 7, which is not having friends and stuff. And then to add like family stuff on top of that, school quickly became a place where I had to come, and I just did not want to come. And like I'd have stuff happening at home, and I'd come to school, and instead of having a break from it, I was just hating school even more. And so I started, just like every part of my life was like terrible.
Yeah.
And so, instead of school being I think for a lot of people, it can be a cool place to come hang out with mates and have a little bit of a break from your life. It was almost like an extension of just the mundane life.
Yeah, well, so even like, you're sitting in those classes, you've acknowledged pretty clearly you hated maths. So were there points Still do. I don't know if you're going to get better from that. Were there situations where you felt like some teachers who, obviously a lot of teachers didn't know what was going on for you, did they?
Yeah, very, very little.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone actually really knew.
No, so were there situations in certain staff where you look back now and you go, wow, you could just sense they cared, or there's compassion, or there was an understanding that was implied. They didn't know your story, but you just got to feel they cared.
Yeah, 100%. Like what I was telling you about before when I was sitting in class, like about to like literally just bore my eyes out. I just said, sir, I could kind of see there was something up with me, and he was like, do you need to go take a break? I was like, yeah, if I can. And went outside, chilled. So, there's been quite a few circumstances where teachers have just picked up, like, I don't know if he's actually okay, and have just given me the time to, just not do the work if they can tell, I can't do the work. And so, and that's really helped me too.
And I loved when you were talking about it with us as teachers just recently, and you said, I didn't want the pity party. I wanted the tough love. I wanted that support. And for teachers to kind of go, Rem, I know there's stuff going on, but what I want to do is make sure that you've got that stability. Did that kind of help you as well?
Yeah, 100%. Especially in grade 9 when, things didn't really get much better. Because coming to like grade 9, my parents got properly divorced, I believe it was in year 9. And so, but in year 9, I had a mixture of teachers. Some like really helped me. And my math teacher at the time, like, helped me majorly.
Let's name that person.
Name drop?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's nice.
Yeah, sweet. Mr. McPherson played a really big role. And it was kind of that tough love thing. Like, the whole year we were kind of a bit like headbutting each other back and forth. But in the times that I think really mattered, I had quite a few conversations with them just like after class when I wasn't doing any work, and instead of just like getting up me and having a go at me about it, he'd kind of ask me like, what's up?
Just checking in.
Yeah, what? I can see you're not doing the work. Like, why aren't you doing the work? And and even though me and him never really got into deep reasons why, just knowing that like he actually cares a bit more than just making me do the work, like, meant a lot to me.
Did that surprise you? Like, if you were to look at your teachers that year and you go, the guy I'm going to shout out to a couple of years later is going to be Mr. McPherson. I think it surprised him. I can still picture his face in that audience.
Well, I think it's one of those things where I didn't actually really recognize then that it meant a lot to me, but looking back on it, I can see that it did.
Yeah, wow.
So like, in the moment, I was still, Mr. McPherson, he's big and, bit of a hard ass. But looking back now, being in grade 11, going to 12, I can just see how that really did make a difference.
Yeah, and you make an interesting point. You talked about the idea that you wanted some tough love, that you still wanted those expectations to be put there. But for me, one of the things that's very clear for you is that the opportunities to discuss it privately, and you mentioned it just before, Anna. Talk us through that. Like, were there situations where that didn't occur and that you felt like there was a little bit of a public situation going on where you were chastised in public?
I wouldn't say like chastised, but there were definitely some experience with some different classes where I think teachers may not have just picked up on it in the same way, or maybe didn't really look for the same kind of like tells, I guess. And so instead of seeing like this kid's not doing work as in there might be something else going on, it's just seen as this kid's not doing work, so he's lazy or something like that. And like even not even just me, I remember especially in my grade 9 classes, there was one in particular which like there were quite a few like naughty kids in there, but there were some kids in there that I just knew were going through some stuff, and like you could just at least I could tell, and I think it's because I kind of look for that in people because I think I've gone through some stuff for myself, but then like teachers would just nail into them like what are you doing? You're not doing your work, and all of that does is just create a perpetual cycle of like, you're mad at me, so I'm not going to listen to you because you're mad, and so we're just going to stay like this and never change anything. Yeah,
wow. So look, if you can picture again, so year 9 seems a bit of a prominent year in terms of tough times. You've found out that your dad's got an addiction, gambling addiction, and poverty almost for you. There were really some tough times where being fed by the church is not a great and ideal situation for any family, but losing that one figure in your life that you really wanted to look up to, and you love your dad and you want to be there and say, I'm so proud of him, you basically feel like he let you down to some extent, don't you?
Yeah, 100%. And that was probably like one of the tougher things of dealing with it was having your image of someone that you really looked up to be like just destroyed in front of you. And like it had ramifications further on that made it even harder. Like, having a single parent was extremely difficult. There was a time where we had to, coming in grade, it was around grade 9, I think start of year 10, we had to move out of our house because we just couldn't afford it. And we ended up having to stay with family friends. And so it was me, my mum and my brother in one bedroom. And that was up in like Broadbeach. And so like coming down to school, that even caused more problems because I was late coming to school, like
buses,
missing buses, and so that caused a whole other deal of problems. And so like it's stuff like that where there's been ramifications of someone else's actions, I think, in your life, where, how do I deal with something that wasn't my fault,
Yeah.
but has happened to you?
And that's a tough thing, I think, as a parent as well, is to, I suppose, face those kind of things. Have you had that chance to talk to your dad about how it has affected you?
Yeah, I've had a lot of good conversations with my dad and a lot of bad
You're
ones.
in a good place at the moment?
Yeah. I've kind of had a chance to say to him, this is what you've done, and really let him know the weight of what it's caused, I guess. But then he's also, so my dad sobered up, because he was an alcoholic too. He went to rehab. He beat his gambling addiction. He beat his alcohol addiction. And so since then, I've had gotten to see him quite a few times, and I'm able to sit down with him now and have some good conversation with him. So yeah, it's been good to be able to have that chance to.
And that's part of your healing process too, Rem, isn't it? Like, I don't see you as someone who walks around with, I've been dealt, a really bad set of cards, and I've, been through all these dramas. You've never had that as a kind of, I suppose, a chip on your shoulder.
Yeah.
You've always taken it in your stride and said, you know what? I did have some tough challenges, but I've been able to have a conversation with my dad about how it's made me feel. But I was so fortunate to have taught you for a term in year 10, only a short time, but at the same time,
Best cook you've ever taught.
Oh, Remy, hey,
Modest to the bone.
Chef Remy, needs to happen. But I had no idea about what was going on. But at the same time, I feel like I didn't need to know all of the details.
Yeah.
Like, I might have realised there was a few kind of situations where I needed to support you, but I think what you've said earlier about not sharing everything can sometimes be quite good. For some teachers to not know everything, so they don't turn around and it's a pity party, and I suppose not voicing that, because sometimes some teachers may not realise that you don't want to be treated any differently.
Yeah, exactly. And it's something I've always tried to do is to not let whatever situation I've been going through in my life.
Well, you've done well, mate.
Thank you.
You've done well.
To not let that destroy every other part of your life.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of that for me, which is what you were saying about, I've always kind of maintained my kind of myself, or my upbeatness and my bubbliness, I guess.
Yeah.
I think a big part has been perspective for me, which is similar to what I said before about telling a story.
Definitely.
I think you can either let what you go through in life tear you down completely and just crush you, and you get into a hole that you can really struggle to get out of, or you can do your best. And it's super hard while you're in it, but at least I found if I just did my best to change the way I look at situations, and just try find the good in it, and just try shift your perspective a little bit. Yeah. And so instead it becomes it's not I'm a mum's single mum and we don't really have a place and we're living at home. You just shift that a little bit to going, well, we've come this far, or, at least I'm not there anymore. At least I'm not getting bullied anymore. Or I've got friends now. There's always something you can find and to shift your perspective, and that helped me majorly.
It sounds to me like you're looking for points of gratitude. I mean, that's certainly a focus we've had this year.
Yeah, 100%.
So, look, I reckon, Remy, one of the things that we really hope from today, Anna, is that we have other kids listen to this, other parents and particularly teachers, and I guarantee there'll be other students who listen to this and they'll have very clearly identified with your story, separated parents, or whether we're talking substance or addiction problems, poverty, whatever it is. So thinking back to that time, what sort of advice would you give kids that are going through this right now? And I know that's putting you on the spot, but I know you've had a chance to think about it. What would you say to them to give them that, maybe that little leg up that no one had the opportunity to give you at that point in time? Tough question, hey?
I think one big thing is hang in there, just keep going. Life can suck at some points, but yeah, if you can just try find the positives in the situation, try shift your perspective a little bit from, instead of just looking at everything bad that's happening, take a look at some of the good things that are happening too, and just keep going, keep pushing. Everything gets better. At some point your cards will turn, and you get dealt a bit of a hand, and I think just keep.
It's
keep
hope,
going.
isn't it? It's that belief
Yeah.
that life or the situation will get better.
Yeah, and I mean, one big thing that I kind of looked at a lot, I think it was Will Smith. I watched like an interview with Will Smith at one point, and he said something that's like always stuck with me ever since, and it was along the lines of, like it might not be your fault what someone did to you, but it's your responsibility to choose the way that affects your life. And so that meant like the world to me, because oftentimes what happens to you is not your fault. And like with me, it was out of my hands. It was my dad's actions that caused all of the pain in my family. And so you can spend your entire life or, you know, all your days just blaming that person, and you can almost want them to fix that situation for you. Like I was there and I was like, Dad, like, you know, like go get another job, like, you know, fix this, like, you know, get us some more money and like get us, like take us out of this situation that we're in. And you get nowhere doing that.
He couldn't help himself at that time.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you were saying.
And so even though it's his fault of that I'm where I am, it's not necessarily his responsibility to get me out of this place.
Yeah, wow.
And so it was taking on that situation that I was dealt and just thinking, all right, how can I better myself? And so for me, it was talking to people. It was like I've had so many counselling sessions with so many different counsellors, and so it's stuff like that where I'm taking an active step to make sure I'm in a good spot, even though it's not necessarily my fault that I'm here.
Yeah,
You are so wise, Remy. Seriously.
that's an awesome way to look at it, and I don't think there's any better way to sum up where you're at. You know, you're in a pretty good place, but you went through some tough times, and I just love hearing that understandings right from the get-go that, you know, I didn't ask for this, but it's my job to fix it, and I'm going to make myself feel better. Talking about gratitude and, you know, looking for the situations that are good in your life still, and I love the idea that you map forward hope. Like, that's such a powerful tool. I guess I've got a question for you that I'm hoping you have another.
Cool.
Putting you on the spot. So point isn't it?
That's good.
So one of the things I know that would probably be dear to your heart is this idea of forgiveness, and it's something I guess when you remove the opportunity to be the victim, which is pretty much what you've done, mate. You're saying, I'm not going to play the victim. Don't give me the pity party. How much has forgiveness for your dad been a part of where you're at today? Because you're in a pretty good space, mate.
I think like forgiveness is a pretty big thing. But I think unforgiveness is like even bigger, and it's been something that I've always tried to be cautious of. I think if you harbour unforgiveness, it can only tear you down even more, and you can walk through life with all of this like bitterness towards a person or a situation, and that bitterness ends up taking away your joy and your happiness. And so for me, it was always like, because I went through a big stage when when it all first happened, of like hating my dad, and like I never did actually hate him, but for me, having this idea of like being angry at him and hating him instead of loving him was easier than being sad, because I didn't have to be sad, I could just be mad at him.
Yeah.
And
That's
so,
easier to deal with.
Yeah, exactly. But that caused me heaps of problems down the track, because like I was fine for a year, and then a year later I was like dealing with all of this baggage that I had, that because I never let go of and I never forgave him. And so I went on a big journey of trying to forgive him, not for him but for me, and in turn that's what I did essentially. And I think the importance of forgiveness is not allowing what someone else did to continue having an effect on your life that it doesn't need to have.
Yeah, look, I think the analogy I was given, I don't know if I'm going to get this right, that hate's like a poison, like you're swallowing poison expecting it's going to kill someone else. It just doesn't work, does it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you're only going to, you can only harm yourself more by not forgiving someone.
And I feel like it was one of the most powerful things was you turning around and saying, I can't do this on my own, I need some help. And to see a counsellor or someone who was trained in that was obviously a really important step for you to deal with those feelings.
And for me, it was when the chaplain came to school, Chappie John.
Yeah.
He has played a monumental like role in my later high school life.
Awesome.
I think I started like just catching up with him in I think it was like end of grade 9, grade 10, grade 11. I still catch up with him now. Like,
It's a good bloke. Why wouldn't you?
Exactly. Yeah. But like, and so now when I catch up with him, I'm like catching up with him.
Yeah.
But like, yeah,
but it's a check-in probably for him too, to be like, hey Rem, what's going on?
And
but
like,
what's really going on?
Exactly. So for me, having people like that to talk to as well, like, meant the world to me. So.
And I feel like you hit the jackpot. Getting Bully as your year coordinator and dean.
I almost feel sorry for him.
Mate, you didn't put all my grey hairs on my head, but I reckon you've contributed.
Quite a few.
Yeah. And look, mate, I was going to say, look, it's been an absolute privilege hearing your story, because I think one of the things that Anna and I particularly want out of all this work we're doing at school is to have kids like yourself and young men like yourself. I've got to stop saying kids, haven't I?
No, I said it outside.
That you can sit back and say, you know, I've just owned my story. I'm telling my story. I feel better for it. But what an amazing way that you've done a beautiful journey from a young guy where you're such, you know, it's trauma. You're struggling. And look at you now, mate. You know, it's a real privilege to chat to you and to be able to record this today. I mean, I know I speak for both of us here. We're so pumped and we're so grateful that you've given your time and you've told your story today, mate. So we can't thank you enough. It's awesome.
No, thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Good on you, Remy.